What's the big idea?
Okay, we are back here with another edition of Volleyballogy. My name is Zuby, and this week we are doing another one of our Player Pep Talks. So this is a discussion for players primarily, but also for parents and coaches. It'd be great to have them listening in. This episode is basically how a player can stop playing with fear and playing basically aggressively. And so many times we see young players on the court or inexperienced players playing with fear on the court, and they are not playing aggressively. It's actually one of the things that drives coaches and players crazy, players and coaches and parents crazy. But what the parents and coaches sometimes don't realize is that oftentimes they're the ones to blame for why the player is playing so scared or playing so frightened. So one thing I want to talk about for players is to understand the difference between sort of drivers and passengers. Okay, so think about it, you're in a car. The driver's driving maybe a little bit fast, maybe a little bit quick around corners, making turns pretty quickly. Maybe it's bad traffic. And the person who tends to be most afraid in that vehicle, if there are two people in the car at least, are the passengers, right? And why is that? The passengers are afraid because they're not in control. The driver often says, "Don't worry, I can handle it." And, assuming they're, not drunk and they're driving with a semi-sane mind, it's true. They have the steering wheel, they have the brakes. They don't need to have the fear of someone who's in the passenger seat with no control. And what's happening on the volleyball courts across the world, really for youth volleyball, is a lot of parents, a lot of coaches are getting, they're afraid because they're not in control. They are the passengers. They're watching the game and they're passing those fears on to players. And this is why players often look at parents, or they look at the coach on the bench after they make a mistake. And the idea is, if parents and coaches can help players become the aggressive players they can be, then those players will excel. Oftentimes we're coaching and we're parenting in a way that we are telling players to not make so many mistakes. And what happens is we get a timid player, or we get a player who, rather than acting like a driver in control of the match, they act like passengers. You can probably see it in your game. So players, there's probably moments when you are playing that you can feel that you are just reacting and you're not thinking and you're just playing. And we call that, the modern term for it is flow, right? When you get in that state where you're just performing, you're not thinking, you're reacting. I think all athletes can relate to that moment, that feeling of just going for it, playing well, and not being afraid. And we can generally agree that those are the moments we play the best. And when you think about the best players you've played against, or the best players you've played with, odds are they are that player. They're players who aren't worried about their spike approach. They're just doing it. They're not reacting. They're not thinking about messing up. They're just worried about cranking the ball or hitting the ball as hard as possible. So we want to be that player. We want to be the player when they go back to serve is more focused on the opposing team and any weaknesses we see in how they're set up, rather than thinking inwardly about not messing up, don't miss my serve. But so many coaches and parents put that in our heads. So athletes, when you're on the court, the goal for you should always be, whenever you have the ball in your hands, whenever it's set for you, your goal should be to put the opposing team in trouble every time you handle the ball. So whether you're serving, you don't want to get the serve over to save your own self-esteem and your own, fear of messing up. You want to think about getting the other team in trouble on that serve. So that'll shift your mindset. It'll distract you from your own thoughts. It'll distract you from focusing on you and get you to focus on attacking the team. So when you go back to the service line, Think about that. Think about, how can I put this team in trouble? It could be a spin serve, it could be a float serve, you could stay on the ground, you could jump. But the idea is, rather than serving a player, serve for seams. So that'll make your serve much more aggressive, and it'll make you, again, stop focusing on messing up. Because when you start to think about weaknesses in other teams or other areas that you can exploit, and you shift your focus, your coach can tell you where to serve if you want to, or you can look up, use your brain, breathe, recognize, and that's the skill you're developing now. Now you're learning to think about the other team, not about yourself, and watch how many fewer service errors you'll make that way. Or if you still are making quite a few service errors in the beginning, they will go away. And also, you're making a service error because you're going for it, not because you're playing it safe. There's nothing worse than a player who makes a mistake while they're playing it safe. Oftentimes, some coaches will think that the team needs to work on team defense, or the team isn't blocking well enough, when really the team might need to work on ending rallies sooner by attacking the ball, right? So, if you're a team, I'll tell you right now, if you're a team or if you're a player who looks over at your coach or a parent after you make a mistake, that's a sign that you're letting those passengers, people not in control of the situation, dictate how you, the driver, are acting in situations where you are in control. So again, we talked about the serve. What about when it's a hit? When it's a hit, you do not want to be thinking about don't mess up. You want to just accelerate into the ball, start your approach nice and late if you're hitting a high ball or a meter. Obviously, if it's a quick or a faster tempo set, you're going to have to change that. But the bottom line is, be explosive to the ball, keep it in front of you, and hit it as hard as you can and as high as you can, right? That's what you want to do. And a lot of coaches will punish players for making mistakes. A lot of parents will get frustrated when their children make mistakes. But go watch a professional indoor or beach volleyball match on YouTube, players or parents. Go check that out and see how many errors are made by high-level players. They get blocked quite a bit. They hit the ball out of bounds quite a bit. They miss their serves quite a bit. And that's because they're all going for it. Okay, and nobody puts the fear of failure in them. Just to extend that theory. So let's take that theory of being afraid of failure, and let's extend that to other areas of our lives. So picture yourself as a baby, right? Like you couldn't walk, right? You're just crawling. Think of how many times as a baby, or when you're watching a baby learn, they fall frequently, right? And the baby's instinct or nature's instinct is not to tell us to stop trying. It's not to tell us to stop going for it. It's nobody's shaking. Imagine if every time a baby was falling down, a parent was shaking their head and covering their face in shame. That baby would have horrible self-esteem, and it might delay its progress it might stop trying to walk because it sees failure, right? So the idea is we don't stop. We don't slow down out of fear of falling or fear of messing up. We keep going, and that's our instinct. And when we deny that instinct, it leads to problems. We play with fear. We make more mistakes. Another great comparison I like to make is, which tightrope walker is more successful, the one who's always thinking about not falling, or the one who's just thinking about getting to the other side, focusing on the goal? Clearly, the one who is thinking about falling all the time is the one who messes up. And same with the safe volleyball player. The players that on the volleyball court who are always thinking about playing it safe always mess up, or they don't end rallies, and then their team loses the rally, and they wonder why they're not getting the kills or not getting the points for the team. So keep that in mind. One of the problems, I think, in this big equation is that you have to ask yourself, has your so players, like, a lot of times coaches haven't played it at a high level. Most coaches who have played at a high level will always tell players to go for it, to attack the ball, because they know that that's who wins in the game of volleyball. Players who play it safe always lose. It's like a metaphor for life, right? Calculated risk taking. So in other words, what I mean in the equivalent in volleyball would be like, have your skill and technique developed and refined as well as possible, and then start swinging hard, okay? And you can have roll shots, you can have tips, obviously, when the ball's not there, the ball's too tight, that's fine. I would suggest to you, though, that even your tips and roll shots can be aggressive, right? You can get the other team in trouble every time you touch the ball or send the ball over that net with a free ball as well, right? There are certain spots in the court, deep corners, all right? Maybe some teams have a vulnerable pot, right over the block in the middle, but I would highly suggest deep corners on every free ball, every roll shot, every tip. Tips can be shorter as well, but tips can also be deep. So get the team in trouble. And part of the problem, like I said, by those parents and coaches who haven't played, they don't understand how necessary it is. And I'm going to tell you something. As a business person, as an athlete, I can tell you that the people who go for it succeed. Again, think about all the people you admire in the world, right? Sports, high level achievers in business. They didn't get to where they are by playing it super safe. In fact, they probably took a lot of calculated risks, not stupid risks, but risks that to others appear very risky, right? People would never do that, would never ever take those risks. A lot of people who gave up careers to go play a sport, a lot of people who gave up great jobs to go pursue their own business interests. Those types of things success only happens really to people who are a little bit bold and who go for it. So when you're on the court, don't be afraid of messing up. I see it all the time. You can see when a light bulb moment goes off, when a player starts swinging, starts even passing more aggressively. So think about what that means. When players are passing more aggressively, they're moving to the ball with confidence. There's no hesitation. There's a clear calling of the ball. If you're playing with, close to other people in your serve-receive formation, they'll establish the seam, whether they're playing right seam, left seam very early, and they will stick with that. They will confidently shuffle in the direction of the pass or get their body behind the ball if possible, and they will follow through with their platform and even stick that platform in the direction of 2.5. That's aggressive passing, right? And aggressive defending. If you think about it, when you watch great players and compare them to weaker players, the difference, actually, the defining difference isn't necessarily technique as much as the boldness to go for it with the right technique. You see timid players and you see aggressive players. So make sure that you are not the timid player. Now, one thing you got to keep in mind, and I don't like to say this too often, I don't mean to offend people here, but if parents and coaches, in your own lives, you have to understand that, I think we all have moments or things about our lives where we wish we went for something in our childhood, or we went for something earlier in life, or we did something else or changed something. Keep in mind that every time you're telling your player, your young player, to just get it over or play it safe, they're going to carry that mindset with them to other things in life and, in their careers, in their lives, because that's the ultimate goal of sports, is to send us out of this off the courts and into our real lives with some sort of newfound skill or a new mindset. It's going to have an impact on how they live off the court too. So keep that in mind, that if you're telling them to play it safe, if they're worried about messing up in front of you, then that is the mindset that they will carry on with them in life. They will have a safe, timid mindset. They will not go for things. They will not play calculatedly and aggressively when necessary. And ultimately, that doesn't lead to great outcomes. So keep that in mind. I've had this. This ties in with an earlier topic we talked about the idea when players aren't getting playing time. If a coach is not giving a child playing time, I often tell parents that is a gift for the player, because now if you tell your son or daughter, you're not getting playing time, so in practice you can just wail on the ball. You can serve as tough as you want. You can hit as tough as you want. Your coach isn't being fair to you anyway. Not saying to be rude to the coach. The coach might have their reasons. But something beautiful can happen when a player realizes that they have nothing to fear, nothing to lose. They can swing aggressively. They can serve aggressively. And you know what happens when they do? They start to stand out. They start to not be like everybody else, and that gets noticed anyway. So not only are the players becoming not only is the player becoming confident, they also become a better player, and they learn that aggressive play, A, gets noticed, and B, gets results, and maybe C, makes them feel better about themselves too. So keep that in mind, that especially if your child's not playing well. I mean, picture again the kids that are getting the playing time, or the starter that your kid, isn't. They are going for it, right? Even great players, by the way, on great teams, when they move to another team, let's suppose they move up a level and they're not the superstar anymore, they can also become these timid players, right? Excuse me. Sorry, just had to get a drink. So that it's a contagious thing, and we tend to revert to safe. It's a protection mechanism. It prevents us from we feel it's preventing us from failing, but it's actually increasing our odds of failing. It's a weird thing that going for things that are a little bit scary tend to pan out much better than playing it safe. So now, again, going back to that playing idea, one of the things that really drives me nuts when I'm seeing coaches advise young players is this notion that they need to, let's suppose before they do a jump float or before they do a jump serve or spin serve, the coach says they need to get so many overhand serves over. And this is just craziness, and I'll tell you why. Because there is no hierarchy in serves, okay? Only people who haven't played at the highest level see this. They elevate the spin serve to something that it's not, or they elevate the jump float to something that it's not. It's just a serve. They're all just serves. And the more you only elevate it because maybe you haven't played a lot or you didn't see a lot when you played. But, as someone who played a lot, I was a spin server my whole career. And to me, that was just my regular serve. And you know what? I would much rather pass a spin serve, a hard jump serve, than a standing float serve any day. I think a lot of players would too, because the ball is moving around like crazy. But the idea is every coach should be teaching their teams from day one of the season, let's find your best, most aggressive serve, or maybe your best top 2 aggressive serves. This is at the junior ranks. And let's try to get those into seams. Let's try to find if it's the seam between 2 players, and teach the players this. By the way, players, you should be at the serving line. You should be looking up at the opposing team before you serve the ball. And you should look at, wow, those 2 players are too close together. Those 2 players are too far apart. I'm going to go there in between those 2 players aggressively, or down that sideline. That player, see, like if you're sitting back there at the service line thinking about, not messing up, then you are missing so much out there. You are missing free points that could be sitting there for you, and you have to exploit them. It could be a short serve dropped right over the net. That's also aggressive, by the way. Aggressive doesn't mean just whale necessarily. It could mean, a short service if a team is playing deep. But the idea is to take away their time, get them in trouble. Okay, you always want to do that. So, so coaches, parents, I think that if your child is looking over at you too much during the sideline, or if you are the player looking over at your parent after every mistake, or looking over at your coach, that's a sign that you are not in the game. You're not anywhere near the flow state. Flow meaning that you're not thinking about anything, you're reacting, and that you're playing with fear. So give it a try for a few weeks. Really try to hit the ball aggressively, get the other team in trouble, set the ball aggressively. For setters, I haven't really mentioned that either, but pursue, get your feet to the spot very fast, get your hands up next. Remember, we don't run with our hands up at setters. We get our feet to the ball, then get our hands up and set the ball in aggressive positions. Maybe start setting players. Maybe if you're afraid to set the quick in the middle, start setting the quick. Maybe if you're afraid to run tandems, X's, backcourt plays, setters need to start implementing those things, because that's their definition of aggressive play, right? You don't want to be a setter who's just doing high ball, meter, high ball, right? Or you want to make sure you mix things up. That's the setter's rule. Liberos, of course, call the ball aggressively, go after it. Expect that every ball coming your way is going to get up. Expect that you're going to get a hand on every ball. You don't want to get out of position, but you do want to be very aggressive, very confident in your approach to digging as well. So that's all part of aggressive play. And again, I'll just leave it at that for this week. The idea is that you will see, honestly, if you try this for a week, you will see a big improvement in not only how you view yourself as a player, but also how those passengers view you. The coaches, the parents will also view you much differently, even though they think that they want you to play cautiously, or you think that you want to play cautiously. Try aggressive play for a week or two, and watch how much you get noticed more, and that you feel better, and that you stop thinking on the court. Because, I mean, it sounds bad to stop thinking, but that's the idea. You want to be someone who is on the court and in that flow state and playing free. Right, that's what this is about, playing free. That's what you should be practicing, because the people who play free end up winning. All right, so that's the Player Pep Talk for this week. I think it's only about 20 minutes. That's not too bad. We want to shorten these up, and hopefully you can put these on your way to games, or put them on before games, and just get a little tip, kind of like a coach's huddle, just to give you advice on how to best stand out on the court and play better. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
What's the big idea?